So the world of motor racing legends is actually in remarkably rude health. I'm pleased to say. I mean, quite remarkably so, given what we've been through in the last 12 months. But the real thing I think that got us through last year, or got us to that point, was three things. Very, very fortunate. The first was that our sponsors sat with us all through the year. They were very, very good, never flinched, kept their support right the way through, and eternally grateful to all of them for that. We'd launched at the beginning of the year, by complete chance, we'd launched the Motor Racing Legends Club. And the whole point of the club is to a way of building a bigger sense of community amongst our racers, not just around the racetracks, but around lots of other events that we could be doing. And all the lovely plans that we thought about kicking off in 2020, of course, all went by the wayside. But at the most basic level, to be really simplistic, the good news is it brought in some much needed revenue. And the third strand is that we have a good number of racers who every year will sign up for the season and pay up front for the racing. And to be really candid, those three strands together were a lifesaver for us. We went into lockdown in actually a very healthy position, and I'm very grateful to everyone concerned for helping to get us through it.
So what have we got in store for this year?
That October meeting gave us the fabulous opportunity to try some new ideas that would have been far too wacky and far too risky to have tried in normal times. And the most obvious of which was the success of that 3-hour race. It was only ever meant to be a one-off, just in reaction to Spa not happening. But before the race had even finished, the competitors were coming up saying, "You've just got to do this again." So we've launched under the banner of the Royal Automobile Club Pall Mall Cup. We're going to run 2 3-hour races this year. We've got one coming up at the Darlington Historic Festival beginning of May, and at Silverstone at the end of October. And that's very exciting. That again, hugely supported by DK Engineering. The other thing that came out of that conversation with DK Engineering, all those conversations, was another grand idea that got us all really, really excited, and that's the Amon Cup for GT40s, a one-make series just for 4 GT40s, built up to a pre-66 spec. Amon Cup, of course, named after the great Chris Amon, F1 racer, but more significantly GT40 racer, winner of Le Mans. And the Amon family have been fabulously supportive of this whole enterprise. Alex Amon, Chris's son in particular, been hugely supportive, and we're very hopeful that the family are going to be attending the racetracks. I have to say that the prospect of a grid full of GT40s is extremely exciting.
So just to clarify, so the GT40 Cup is purely because they are not allowed to enter into the 3-hour race. Is that right?
It's not. It came from that discussion. It's not because they're excluded. The Pall Mall Cup is for pre-66 GT cars, GT and GTS, and touring cars and 50 sports cars. GTPs, prototypes, are not allowed in the Pall Mall Cup. There's a very deliberate decision to keep the performance relatively level throughout the grid. But absolutely, from that conversation came the realization that all these GT40s, which outside of the Spa 6 hours, really have nowhere to race. And rather than put on a grid into which the GT40s could run, we thought, why not do a grid exclusively for GT40s? And that's what we're going to do. And the support's looking great. It's looking very exciting, I have to say. Can't wait for it.
There's a team element to the Pall Mall Cup. Can you explain that?
There are 2 elements to the Pall Mall Cup in terms of trophies. You've obviously got the overall awards and the class structure that goes behind that. And but on top of that, the actual Pall Mall Cup itself is going to be presented to the winning team. And this was a format that we made up in October, to be honest. Nothing better than that. And it worked so incredibly well first time out. We're just going to repeat it. The teams are made up of teams of 3 cars. Each car must be from a different class. And so it's not just about your own performance. It's about all of your teammates have got to get through to win. And one of the things we found in October was that the teams that you really thought were in with a great chance in the end didn't do as well as they might have done. And the winners' rostrum from October was really varied and spread the love well through the pack, which was perfect.
Yes,
so really, it's the team prize that really matters more than overall.
So Darlington Historic Festival, your first meeting, which is set to go ahead, and how are entries looking for that? What's it going to look like?
Yeah, Darlington Historic Festival coming up 1st and 2nd of May. We're very conscious that we're still within the restrictions of the pandemic restrictions, although they're starting to ease. I'm really pleased to say that despite all of that, the entries are coming in thick and fast. We're logging multiple entries every day for all of the grids. Really, really excited. I mean, I have to say, head and shoulders, Pall Mall Cup is well on its way to being full already, which has caused us quite a surprise. But all of the grids are doing really, really well. Yes, we're fielding queries about details, but fundamentally, the event's going ahead, no question. That's been confirmed. And with no exceptions, the grids are looking fantastic. The one grid that I think is worth pointing out, in particular, it's a new grid to us, although it's been around for a very long time. We were approached last summer by Jaguar to take on responsibility for the Jaguar Classic Challenge. And so Donington Historic Festival this year will be the first time that series is run under our stewardship. We're extremely excited. We're very privileged to be asked to take the series on. And I'm also, there's a degree of nervousness that we've got a lot to live up to. It's a fantastic series. It's been very well supported over the years. And I'm really pleased to say that we're getting really terrific support. In terms of the entries in so far, it's right up there, just behind the Pall Mall Cup for support. So again, another series that bodes well. But I have to say, it's true of all the series here. The Woodcote Trophy, Stirling Moss Trophy, looking fantastic. Touring cars looking really very, very good indeed for the Historic Touring Car Challenge and the Tony John Trophy, and the 60s Touring Car Challenge, New 2TC, which will run with them. So it's a broad field, but it's going to be a really big, packed field. Of course, the most important grid of all is the pre-war sports cars. And again, I'm no doubt we'll get a really good turnout for that. They're always very slow coming out the book, the pre-war boys, but I have every faith in them. So really, really looking forward to Donington. Very important meeting.
What about do we know any of the details yet? Do you know if we're going to be allowed spectators?
Yeah, the plan for Donington is that the expectation, I mean, everything's very fluid, and I think until we get there, we won't know for certain. Our expectation is that Donington will be open to the public to some extent. Now, I must stress that, you check on the website, as they always say, because things can change, but it is my expectation that the public will be allowed to attend the Donington Historic Festival. Having said that, it is also my expectation that they will be restricted to what they call the non-working areas. So the public will not be allowed into the paddock. I suspect they'll be restricted to the outfield. But it doesn't matter. We're all talking about racing drivers can't wait to get out there. We've got to remember that the public have been denied this spectacle as well. So that there's a huge demand from the public to be allowed into the spectacle. So even if they've got to stay on the outside, they won't care. It'll be fantastic to see them. And, there's no substitute for racing in front of a live audience.
So we know hotels are open to those who are officially working or whose racing is working. And presumably you're going to let competitors camp in the paddock. That's all allowed.
Yeah, it's another one of those grey areas. With regards to accommodation, there's no self-catering accommodation. Absolutely no question. There's no grey area about that. So motorhomes in the paddock. If you want to tent in the paddock, if you can find some grass, you're perfectly entitled to do that. I think Airbnb accommodation, self-catering accommodation, is perfectly okay. So when it comes to hotels, that is a bit of an anomaly. You're absolutely right, Sarah, when you say that work is a legitimate claim. Of course, for all the preparers and a lot of the teams, that's a very easy box to tick. The debate I think that each owner's got to have is they can declare themselves as working. That would be my suggestion, but I think everybody has to take that on their own advice, as it were.
So it's all going to look quite different, but I'm with everyone else. I'm just excited to get out there and get driving again. So we'll put up with.
I think the experience for the drivers is going to be very similar to the experience we had at Thruxton last summer, where for anyone who was there, remember this as a driver. Again, the public were allowed in to the event back in August, but they weren't allowed into the paddock. The other point to just mention there, which I'm sure will happen again, is the drivers were not allowed out into the public area, so they weren't allowed to mingle. That didn't matter at all. We had the benefit of a live show, but also there was always, in a rather charming way, there was that sense of a private party at the same time. So that really worked. We will still be catering for all of our drivers. We'll do. We're planning to do, as we did at Thruxton, a kind of takeaway, hamper, and we'll put in some facilities where people can sit, socially distanced, of course. So we'll make sure everyone's looked after and not abandoned at the meeting. But unfortunately, we won't be able to do our full-blown hospitality and all the social mingling. But we'll find a way of doing a happy hour somehow.
All important happy hour, absolutely. But the briefings, the scrutineering via self-declaration was a brilliant thing last year, and hopefully that's here to stay.
Yeah, the self-declaration, the driver's sign-on, I think we all expect that to stay forever. And I have to say that I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that if we can do away with the queues for drivers signing on first thing in the morning, I don't think any of us are going to shed any tears over that. Scrutineering is an interesting one, no question. For the time being, it is going to be down to self-declaration. Scrutineering longer term, I think that there's just a few alarm bells in the back of my mind about how scrutineering goes forward, because I can see pressure remaining for us to stick with the self-declaration system. And the problem is, whilst undoubtedly 99.999% of racing drivers and racing teams never cheat and would never dream of cheating, there's always the 0.0001% who might just be tempted to push the boundary a bit. And the challenge for the scrutineers is to make sure that doesn't happen. And of course, the harder it is for the scrutineers to get access to the cars, then the easier it is for people who feel they can interpret the rules in a more flexible way. And that's something that we've got to find a solution to going forward, because I wouldn't be surprised if we have pressure put on us from the circuits to see a virtual scrutineering remain for the future, long after all these problems are cleared up. If for no other reason than it's cheaper. And good scrutineers do not grow on trees. That's the other problem. So
worst case scenario then, if lockdown returns and we all go back down to no racing, what have you got anything to say about refunds or entries that are piling in at the moment?
We've said all along, if any of these events are cancelled for whatever reason to do with COVID, then we will give full refunds, no question. What we found last year was that in almost every single case, every driver just said, look, just keep the money, let it roll over. And that was a godsend. And if we do, let's hope not, if we find ourselves in that position again this year, I would very much hope that that spirit would prevail. But there's no question, we've either given full refunds or 100% credit if people are happy with that. So there's no debate about that issue.